Jake Martinez looked at the star map on his ship's screen. Red dots showed enemy positions all around the planet below. Too many to count. His team of 12 humans sat behind him, checking their weapons and gear. They all knew this mission was crazy. Our Therian fleet is still 3 days out, said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was his best pilot. We could wait. For them, Jake shook his head. 3 days is too long. The princess might be dead by then. The princess was Zarin, daughter of the Thalorian emperor. She had come to the planet Kepler 442b for a peace meeting with local leaders. It was supposed to be safe. Then the Drar horde attacked. They took her and killed everyone else. At the meeting, the Drar were known across the galaxy for their cruelty. They were 7 ft tall, covered in thick scales and had claws like knives. They enjoyed causing pain. Most species feared them, but humans were different. They had only been in space for 300 years. They were still learning about the galaxy, but they lacked an advanced technology. They made up for with creativity and courage. The Drar have her in their main camp, Jake said, pointing at the screen. It's in the mountains surrounded by cliffs. They think it's impossible to attack because it is impossible, said Sergeant Ben Cooper. They have energy shields, guard towers, and 500 warriors. Jake smiled. Impossible for anyone thinking like them, but we're human. The plan was simple but risky. While the Drar watched the sky for Thalorian ships, Jake's team would climb the cliffs at night. They would use old-fashioned ropes and climbing gear. No technology the enemy could detect. 2 hours later, they were on the planet's surface. The air was thin and cold. The cliffs rose like black walls into the starry sky. Jake could see lights from the enemy camp far above. Remember, he whispered to his team, we get in, find the princess, and get out. No heroes, no unnecessary fights. The climb took 4 hours. Jake's hands were raw and bleeding by the time they reached the top, but they had made it without being seen. The camp was spread out below them, full of sleeping Drar warriors. The princess was being held in a metal cage at the center of the camp. Even from a distance, Jake could see she was hurt but alive. Her blue skin had cuts and bruises. Her silver hair was dirty and tangled, but her eyes still showed strength. 2 guards by the cage, Amy whispered. Patrol routes change every 10 minutes. Jake studied the camp for an hour, learning the patterns. Then he moved. Human soldiers were trained to think fast and adapt, while other species followed rigid plans. Humans could change their approach in seconds. They disabled the guards silently. Jake cut through the cage bars with a plasma torch while his team watched for enemies. The princess looked up at him with surprise. Who are you? She asked in perfect English. Her voice was weak but clear. Commander Jake Martinez, Earth Defense Force. We're here to get you home. She stared at him. You're human? I thought humans were just myths. Very real. Can you walk? She tried to stand but fell. Jake caught her. I think my leg is broken. Without hesitation, Jake lifted her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but still solid. Her skin was warm despite being blue. Why did you come? She asked as his team moved toward their escape route. Humans have no alliance with my people. Because it was right, Jake said simply. They made it halfway to the cliffs before the alarm sounded. Draktar warriors poured out of their shelters, roaring with anger. Energy bolts lit up the night sky. Run, Jake shouted. His team provided cover fire. while Jake carried the princess, Amy. Foster used a rocket launcher to destroy a guard tower. Ben Cooper threw grenades to slow down the pursuit. At the cliff edge, they set up their rappelling gear. One by one, the team went down. Jake went last, still carrying Zerilyn. "I've never seen humans fight before," she said. As they descended, "You're not like what I was taught." "What were you taught?" "That humans are weak, primitive, that you have no honor." Jake smiled as he landed at the bottom of the cliff. "Maybe we're different than you expected." They reached their ship as the drawer finally organized a real pursuit. Jake's pilot had the engines running. As they lifted off, energy bolts hammered their shields in the ship's medical bay. Jake bandaged the princess's wounds. She watched him work with curious eyes. "Why did you risk your lives for me?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Jake met her gaze. "Everyone deserves to be free. Doesn't matter what species they are." "Is that a human belief?" "It's my belief, and yes, most humans think that way." She was quiet for a moment. "What's your name again?" "Jake. Jake Martinez." "Jake," she repeated, testing the sound. I'm Zarlin. Thank you for saving me." Over the next 2 days, as they traveled to meet the Thalorian fleet, Jake and Zarin talked for hours. She asked endless questions about Earth, about human history and culture. He told her about democracy, about human art and music, about how humans saw the universe. She told him about the theory and empire, about worlds covered in crystal cities, about her people's long history among the stars. She spoke of responsibility and duty, of being born to rule billions of people. "I never chose this life," she admitted. "I was born a princess. That decided everything for me. Choice is important to humans." Jake said, "We believe everyone should be free to decide their own path, even princesses, especially princesses." When they finally met the Thalorian fleet, Jake was amazed by their ships. They were huge, elegant vessels that looked like works of art. The Thalorian military treated him like a hero. They gave him medals and honors, but what mattered most was the look in Zarin's eyes when they said goodbye. There was something there that hadn't been there before, something that made Jake's heart beat faster. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "I hope so," he said. As his ship departed, Jake knew his life had changed forever. He had come to rescue a princess and found something he never expected, something that would challenge everything both their worlds believed about love, duty, and the differences between species. 2 years passed since the rescue. Jake and Zara met whenever they could. Sometimes she visited Earth, sometimes he traveled to Thalorian space. Each meeting felt like a gift. Jake learned to speak her language. The sounds were musical, like singing. Zarilyn taught him about Thalorian customs and history. Her people had been traveling between stars for thousands of years when humans were still living in caves. She learned about human culture too. She read books about Earth's history, about wars and peace, about how humans struggled to understand themselves. She loved human music most of all. "Your people put so much emotion into everything," she said. One evening, they were sitting in Jake's apartment on Earth, listening to an old song about love and loss. Theorians are taught to control their feelings. "Feelings make us human," Jake said. "Without them, we're just machines." My father would disagree. He says emotions make rulers weak. Emperor Kethan did not approve of His daughter's relationship, neither did. The Thalorian royal court, they whispered that the princess was lowering herself by loving a primitive human. Some called for her to be removed from the line of succession. On Earth, the government was also worried. Admiral Lisa Parker called Jake to her office at Earth Defense Command. This relationship is causing problems, she said. Therian Empire is our most important ally. We can't afford to upset them. My personal life is my business, Jake replied. Not when you're dating their future empress. Some Therian nobles are saying, we sent you to seduce her, that it's all a human plot to control their empire. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. That's not true, and you know it. What I know doesn't matter. What matters is politics. The emperor is under pressure. To end this, the pressure came to a head during a state dinner on the Thalorian capital world. Jake was there as Zarin's guest. The crystal city around them glowed with soft blue light. The dinner was held in a hall that could hold 1,000 people. Emperor Kethan was tall and imposing even for a Thalorian. His skin was deep blue, almost purple, and his eyes were like silver coins. When he looked at Jake, there was no warmth in them. So you are the human who thinks he can court my daughter, the emperor said. His voice carried across the entire hall. I am the human who loves your daughter, Jake replied. The hall went silent. Love, the emperor repeated the word like it tasted bad. Love is a luxury princes and princesses cannot afford. We marry for the good of our people, not for our hearts. With respect, your majesty, Zarin should have the right to choose her own future. The emperor's eyes narrowed. Rights? You speak of rights while my nobles plot against my family because of you. Do you know what they say? They say my daughter has been corrupted by human ideas, that she is no longer fit to rule. Jake felt Zarin's hand tighten on his arm. She was afraid, but not for herself. She was afraid for him. Father, please, she said quietly. Silence. The emperor's voice was like ice. You will speak when I give you permission. He turned back to Jake. You have caused enough trouble, human. My daughter has duties that are older than your entire civilization. She cannot abandon them for a romantic fantasy. I'm not asking her to abandon anything, Jake said. Then what are you asking? Jake looked at Zarin. Her silver eyes were filled with tears she wasn't allowed to shed. In that moment, he understood the impossible position she was in. She could choose love or duty, but not both. Her people would never accept a human as their future emperor. I'm not asking for anything, Jake said, finally. After the dinner, Jake and Zarlin walked through the crystal gardens of the palace. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence. He will make me choose, she said, between you and the throne. What will you do? I don't know. I love you, but I love my people too. If I give up the throne, my Kusanar will inherit. He believes in war and conquest. He would bring suffering to billions. Jake stopped walking. He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. Then don't choose, he said. What do you mean? I choose for you. I'm ending this. Us. Her face went pale. Jake, no. We can find another way. There is no other way. You said it yourself. Your cousin would be a terrible ruler. Your people need you. But I need you. Jake's heart was breaking, but he forced himself to smile. No, you don't. You're stronger than you know. You'll be a great empress. Without me, you're just going to walk Away after everything we've shared. I'm walking away because of everything we've shared. I love you enough to let you be who you're meant to be. Tears ran down her blue cheeks like liquid silver. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, but sometimes we have to do what's right instead of what we want. What if I refuse? What if I give up the throne? Anyway, Jake shook his head. You won't. Because you're better than that. Because you care too much about your people too. Let them suffer. She stared at him for a long moment. You really mean this? Yes. You're ending us to save my empire. I'm ending us because I love you. She pulled her hands away from his. Love shouldn't require sacrifice. Sometimes it does. Sometimes love means letting go. 3 days later, Jake left Thalorian space. He didn't say goodbye to Zara. He couldn't face seeing her pain again. Instead, he left a message for her. You are going to be the greatest ruler your people have ever known. He recorded, you have the strength to lead and the heart to care. Don't let anyone tell you that emotions make you weak. They make you human. Well, as human as it can be. He smiled. Sadly, I'll always love you, but more than that, I'll always believe in you. Be the empress your people need. Be the leader the galaxy needs. And maybe someday, when you're sitting on your throne making the hard decisions that keep billions safe, you'll remember that a human once thought you were worth everything. Zarin watched the message alone in her chambers. When it ended, she threw herself on her bed and cried for hours. When she finally stopped, she felt empty inside, like part of her soul had been torn away. But she also understood Jake had given her the greatest gift possible. He had given her the freedom to choose duty without guilt. He had taken the burden of choice away from her by making it himself. She would become empress. She would rule wisely and well, but she would never forget the human who loved her enough to let her go. 6 months later, war came to the galaxy, and with it, everything would change again. The first attack came without warning. Ships appeared at the edge of the space like ghosts. They were black as the void between stars, with no lights or markings. When the Thalorian fleet moved to intercept them, something impossible happened. The enemy ships passed right through the Thalorian vessels like they weren't there. Then they became solid again and fired weapons that tore holes in reality itself. Entire starships simply stopped existing. Within hours, 3 worlds went dark. Their populations of billions vanished without a trace. The enemy left behind only empty planets and silence. The attackers called themselves the Void Collective. They had been watching the galaxy for millions of years, waiting. Now they had decided that organic life was a mistake that needed to be corrected. Their message was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Biological chaos will end. Order will be restored. Resistance is obsolete. Jake was on Earth when the news arrived. He was training new pilots at the Defense Academy, trying to forget about Princess, who had once meant everything to him. When Admiral Lisa Parker called an emergency meeting, Jake knew something terrible had happened. Show them the footage, she told her aide. Hologram showed the destruction of Thalorian ships. Jake watched vessels he recognized, ships that had welcomed him as a hero 2 years ago, simply disappear. Good people gone in seconds. How many dead? Someone asked. 15 billion so far. And that's just the first day. Jake felt sick. What about the princess? Is she safe? Admiral Parker looked at him with Sympathy, we don't know. The royal family was evacuated from the capital, but communication with Therian spaces limited. The war spread quickly. Void Collective attacked dozens of worlds simultaneously. Their ships could phase through matter, making shields useless. Their weapons ignored energy barriers and tore apart the basic forces that held atoms together. Every major species tried to fight them. The proud Xerian Confederacy lost half their fleet. In the first week, the ancient Velari Empire, which had ruled 1,000 worlds for 10,000 years, fell in a month. Even the mechanical Zelani, who had thought themselves above organic weakness, were destroyed. Only humans seemed to have any success against the enemy, not because human ships were better, but because humans fought differently. Captain Mia Rodriguez led the first successful attack against a void ship. Instead of using energy weapons, she rammed it with an old cargo hauler filled with explosives. The enemy ship couldn't phase through solid matter that was actively colliding with it. Lieutenant Chris Walker figured out how to track phased ships by watching how they affected cosmic radiation. It wasn't perfect, but it gave human pilots a chance to fight back. Jake was promoted to captain and given command of a strike force. His job was to hit void positions behind enemy lines. It was dangerous work that most species considered suicide, but humans had always been good at impossible missions. The key is thinking like prey, Jake explained to his pilots. Every other species fights like predators. They want to dominate, to overpower the enemy, but humans evolved as prey animals. We know how to hide, how to run, how to strike. When the hunter isn't looking, his tactics worked. Human ships would hide in asteroid fields or behind moons, waiting for void patrols. When the enemy ships came close, the humans would attack from unexpected angles using weapons the Void Collective hadn't planned for. Chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, even nets made of metal cable. Old simple technology that worked because it was too primitive for the enemy to predict. Jake's squadron destroyed more void ships than any other unit in the combined fleet, but success came with a price. He watched friends die in every battle, good people who followed him into impossible situations because they trusted him to bring them home. Amy Foster was killed when her ship was caught between two void destroyers. Ben Cooper died defending a refugee convoy. One by one, Jake's friends from the Princess Rescue mission were lost too. The war, each death made him more determined to fight. He started taking bigger risks, leading more dangerous missions. Other captains said he fought like a man who wanted to die. They were wrong. Jake fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. The war raged for 3 years. Humanity punched above its weight, but the galaxy was losing. The Void Collective had infinite patience and endless ships. They didn't need food or rest or hope. They just needed to destroy everything that lived. Therian space contracted as world after world fell. The great crystal cities that had stood for millennia were reduced to empty husks. Refugees fled deeper into the galaxy, carrying stories of horror that broke the spirit of entire species. Jake found himself wondering about Zara Lynn constantly. Was she alive? Was she leading her people's retreat? Had she thought about him even once since he left? He got his answer during a mission to rescue Thalorian civilians from an occupied world. The refugees told him that Princess Zarin had become empress after. Her father died defending the capital. She was leading the military personally, fighting alongside her soldiers. The empress is brave, an old Thalorian woman told Jake. But she is also sad. My granddaughter serves in her guard. She says the empress speaks of a human. Sometimes a human who saved her long ago. Jake's heart ached. Even in the middle of a galactic war, Zarin remembered him, but that knowledge made fighting even harder. Every battle brought the possibility that he might not survive to see her again. The war reached a turning point when Thalorian intelligence discovered something terrible. The Void Collective was building a massive structure at the center of the galaxy. Early reports suggested it was some kind of central computer that controlled their entire network. If the reports were true, destroying it might shut down every void ship in the galaxy. But reaching it would require flying through the most heavily defended space in known history. It was, everyone agreed, a suicide mission, the kind of mission that humans had made their specialty. Admiral Parker called Jake to Earth for a briefing. He hadn't been home in over a year. The planet looked different now. Orbital defense platforms filled the sky like metal moons. Cities below showed the strain of 3 years of war. We need someone to lead this mission, she said, someone who understands how to fight the impossible. Fight? How many ships would I have? As many as you think you need. This is humanity's contribution to ending the war. Jake studied the star charts, showing the route to the galactic center. It was thousands of light years through enemy territory. The Void Collective would throw everything they had at any force trying to reach their central nexus. I'll need volunteers. Only, Jake said. No one gets ordered on this mission. You'll have them, but Jake, Admiral Parker's voice was gentle. There's something else you should know. The Thalorian fleet will be joining this operation. What's left of it anyway? Jake's heart stopped. She's coming here. The Empress personally requested to meet with you to coordinate the attack after 3 years of war, 3 years of fighting to protect something he could never have again. Jake was about to see Zara Lynn, the woman he had loved enough to let go, was coming back into his life, but she wasn't coming as the princess he remembered. She was coming as an empress whose empire was dying, a leader whose people were counting on a desperate plan to save them all, and she was coming with a question that would change everything. Have you forsaken me, human? Therian flagship, divine retribution, limped into Earth's solar system like a wounded animal. Jake watched from the observation deck of the command station as the massive ship approached. Even from a distance he could see the damage. Burn marks covered its crystal hull. One of its main engines was completely gone. This ship had once been the pride of the Thalorian fleet. Now it was one of the last. Jake's hand shook as he prepared for the meeting. 3 years had passed since he walked away from Zara. 3 years of war, death, and regret. He wondered if she would even want to see him. Admiral Parker met the Thalorian delegation at the docking bay. Jake stood behind her with the other senior officers. When the airlock opened, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The woman who stepped through barely looked like the princess he remembered. Zarin was thinner now, her face marked by years of hard decisions. She wore military armor instead of royal robes. A scar ran from her left temple to her jaw. Her silver eyes had a hardness that hadn't been there before. But she was still beautiful, still the woman who had captured his heart on a distant world. She greeted Admiral Parker formally, discussing alliance matters and battle plans. Her voice was steady and professional, but when her eyes met Jake's across the room, something flickered in them, pain, maybe, or anger. The briefing took place in the main conference room. Holographic displays showed the galactic situation. Red zones marked void-controlled space. It covered more than half the galaxy. Now the situation is critical, Emperor Zarin said. Her English was perfect, though she spoke with the careful precision of someone using a second language. We have perhaps 6 months before our remaining worlds fall. This strike at their central nexus is our last hope. General Pat Logan from Mars Command leaned forward. Our intelligence suggests the nexus controls their entire network, but reaching it means flying through 1,000 light-years of enemy space. My fleet will provide escort as far as possible, Zarlin said, but we have only 40 ships left. Against their numbers, we cannot guarantee anything. Jake studied the tactical displays. The mission was even more dangerous than he had thought. The Void Collective had turned the Galactic Center into a fortress. Millions of their ships guarded the approaches. How many people do we need to take out the Nexus? He asked. Our scientists believe a small team could destroy it from within. Zarlin replied without looking at him. But getting that team inside will require a significant sacrifice. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made, resources allocated, impossible odds calculated. Through it all, Jake was aware of Zarin's presence like a physical force. She had changed so much, but her voice still made his heart race. When the formal session ended, the other officers filed out. Jake started to leave as well, but Zarin's voice stopped him. Captain Martinez, a moment, please. He turned. They were alone in the conference room now, surrounded by the ghostly light of holographic star charts. Zarlin stood at the far end of the table, her hands clasped behind her back. Your Majesty, Jake said formally. Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't call me that. Not you. They stared at each other across the length of the table. 3 years of separation stretched between them like a chasm. You look good, Jake said finally. I mean, you look strong, like a real leader. Do I? Her laugh was bitter. I feel like a failure. Half my people are dead. My empire is falling apart, and the one person I trusted most abandoned me when I needed him. Jake felt like he'd been punched. Zarin, I didn't abandon you. You left. Her voice cut through his words like a blade. You said you loved me and then you left. I left because I loved you. Did you? She walked around the table toward him, her movements controlled but full of suppressed anger. Or did you just get tired of the complications, tired of dealing with alien politics and imperial expectations? That's not fair. She stopped an arm's length away from him. You want to talk about fair? You want to know what's been fair about the last 3 years? Jake could see the pain in her eyes now, raw and deep. Zara, I became Empress at 24 because my father died fighting a war we couldn't win. I've watched billions of my people die, while I made impossible choices about who to save and who to sacrifice. I've led fleets into battles I knew they couldn't win because someone had to try. Her voice was rising now, years of bottled emotion finally breaking free. And through it all, through every dark moment when I wanted to give up, I Thought about you, I thought about the human who risked everything to save a stranger, the man who believed I could be better than I was. Jake reached toward her, but she stepped back. But you weren't there, she continued, when the war started, when my father died, when I needed someone to tell me I wasn't alone in the universe. You were gone, you made your choice and walked away. I thought I was doing the right thing, Jake said quietly. The right thing for who? For me? For you? Or just the easiest thing? Jake felt his own anger rising. You think this was easy? You think walking away from you was easy? I don't know what to think anymore. I came here hoping to find the man I remembered, the one who said love meant protecting what mattered, but maybe that man never existed. He existed. He's standing right here. Zarin studied his face for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. Have you forsaken me, human? The question hung in the air between them. Jake understood now that this wasn't just about their relationship. It was about trust, about whether the man she had loved was still worth believing in. No, he said simply, I never did. Then prove it. Before Jake could respond, Admiral Parker's voice came over the intercom. Captain Martinez to the command center, Priority 1. Jake looked at Zara Lynn one more time, then left to answer the call, but her question followed him through the corridors of the station. Have you forsaken me, human? In the command center, Admiral Parker was waiting with a grim expression. We just received word from our deep space scouts, she said. The Void Collective is moving faster than expected. They're launching a final assault on the remaining free worlds. We have maybe 2 weeks before the Thalorian core systems fall. What about our mission to the Nexus? That just became our only option. We leave in 3 days, ready or not. Jake nodded. Take a 100 ships, volunteers only, Jake. Admiral Parker said quietly, you know, this is a one-way trip. I know. Are you sure you're doing this for the right reasons? Jake thought about Zara Lynn's question, about 3 years of fighting a war to protect people he would never see again, about the woman he had loved enough to let go, who now thought he had abandoned her. Yes, he said, I'm doing it for love. That night Jake stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. Earth hung below like a blue jewel. Somewhere out there, Zara Lynn was preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. He had spent 3 years trying to prove his love through distance and sacrifice. Now he would have to prove it through presence and action. The woman he had walked away from to save was asking if he had forsaken her. His answer would be written in starlight and shadow, in the fires of the last battle for organic life in the galaxy. He would show her that a human's love was not measured by staying or leaving, but by what he was willing to fight for. And Jake Martinez was willing to fight for everything. Jake didn't sleep that night. Instead, he walked through the corridors of the command station, visiting the pilots who had volunteered for the mission. 112 men and women from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. They all knew they probably wouldn't come home. Why are you doing this? He asked each of them. The answers were always the same: because someone has to, because it's right, because humans don't give up. At dawn, Jake found himself in the observation lounge where he had first seen Zarin's ship arrive. She was there, standing alone at the massive window, looking out at the stars. Couldn't sleep either. He asked. She didn't turn around. Sleep is a luxury commanders can't afford. Jake stood beside her, in the reflection. On the window, he could see how tired she looked, how much the war had aged her. I have something to tell you, he said, about why I really left. I don't want to hear excuses. It's not an excuse, it's the truth. She finally looked at him. Then speak. Jake took a deep breath. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I started understanding what love really meant. Explain. When your father threatened to take away your throne, I realized something. You were born to lead your people. It wasn't just a title or a responsibility. It was who you were meant to be, and I was standing in the way of that. Zarin was quiet, but she was listening. I thought about asking you to choose me instead of the crown, but that would have been selfish. Your people needed you more than I did, so I made the choice for both of us. You decided my life without asking me. I decided to protect your life without asking you. There's a difference. She turned away from the window to face him fully. And what have you been doing for the past 3 years? Jake, what has your great sacrifice accomplished? I've been fighting your war. The words came out quietly, but they hit her like a thunderbolt. What? Every mission I've flown, every battle I've fought, it's been to protect what you're going to inherit. I couldn't be with you, but I could make sure you still had something to rule when this war ends. Zarlin stared at him. That's not, you can't mean that. Before Jake could answer, Admiral Amy Foster entered the lounge. She had been promoted after surviving more battles than anyone thought possible. She looked between Jake and Zara, Lynn with understanding. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but Your Majesty, you asked about Captain Martinez's service record. Amy. Don't, Jake warned. She has a right to. No, Amy replied. She turned to Zarin. Captain Martinez has flown more combat missions than any other pilot in the fleet. He's destroyed 37 void ships personally and saved thousands of civilians. He's been offered promotion to Admiral 3 times and refused them. All why? Zarin asked. Because admirals don't fly combat missions, Amy said, and he insisted on staying in the fight. When I asked him why once, he said he was protecting something that mattered. Amy paused, looking directly at the Empress. He never said what, but I think I know now. After Amy left, Zarlin and Jake stood in silence for a long time. You've been fighting for me, she said. Finally, all this time I've been fighting for the future you represent, for the peace you'll bring when this war is over. And you never told me. What was I supposed to say? Hello, I love you, but we can't be together, so I'm going to risk my life daily to keep your empire safe. You had enough to worry about. Zarin's eyes filled with tears. You impossible, stubborn, wonderful human. Before Jake could respond, the alert klaxon sounded. Emergency messages flooded the communication systems. The Void Collective had launched their final assault ahead of schedule. All senior officers to the command center. Came the announcement. Operation Final Strike is now active. In the command center, the tactical displays showed the full scope of the enemy attack. Thousands of void ships were converging on the last free worlds. The attack on the Nexus could no longer wait. We launch in 6 hours, Admiral Parker announced. All available ships. This is everything we have. Jake looked at the force assembled for the mission. 150 human ships and 40 Thylorian vessels against the million Ships guarding the Galactic Center. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was what they had. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation, final checks on weapons and engines, last messages recorded for families who might never see their loved ones again, prayers spoken in a dozen different languages. Jake was doing a final inspection of his ship when Zarin found him. "I'm coming with you," she said. "No, you're the Empress. Your people need you alive. My people need this mission to succeed, and I trust you to make that happen." Zarlin. Jake, she stepped closer to him. "I've spent 3 years thinking you abandoned me. I'm not spending whatever time we have left apart from you." He wanted to argue, but the determination in her eyes stopped him. This was the woman who had become an empress at 24 and led her people through the darkest war in galactic history. She wasn't going to be talked out of anything. "Together then," he said. Together, the fleet launched at noon Earth time, 190 ships against impossible odds. The journey to the Galactic Center would take 3 days through hyperspace, 3 days to reach either victory or death. On the second day, they encountered the outer defenses. Void ships appeared like shadows phasing in and out of reality. The battle was chaos. Ships vanished. Flashes of impossible light. Others were torn apart by weapons that shouldn't exist. Jake's ship, the Resilience, led the spearhead formation. Behind him flew Zara Lynn in her command vessel, protected by the best pilots humanity had to offer. Enemy contact 300 high, called Lieutenant Dan Roberts. Jake rolled his ship as energy beams carved through the space where he had been. All ships pattern Delta make them chase us. The human fleet scattered like startled birds, then reformed behind the enemy. It was a tactic that worked because humans thought like prey animals. They knew how to run, how to hide, how to strike from unexpected angles. By the time they reached the inner system, only 60 ships remained. The Nexus hung before them like a metallic moon, surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol fleets. "This is it," Jake announced over the fleet channel. "All ships cover the assault teams. Whatever happens, we get through." What followed was the most desperate battle in human history. Ships threw themselves at impossible odds. Pilots rammed their vessels into enemy platforms when their weapons failed. The space around the Nexus became a graveyard of metal and dreams. Jake's ship made it through the defenses with its hull cracking and systems failing. The Nexus loomed ahead, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. "Zara Lynn, are you still with me?" he called over the radio. "Right behind you," came her voice. "The docking bay is there. North pole of the structure." They landed inside the Nexus with emergency power only. The corridors were filled with strange light and geometry that seemed to twist space itself, but they pressed forward, carrying the explosive charges that would destroy the central computer at the heart of the Nexus. They found it, a crystalline structure the size of a building, pulsing with dark energy, the source of every void ship in the galaxy, setting charges. Jake said, placing the explosives with practice efficiency. "We have 5 minutes to get clear." They ran through corridors that shifted around them like a maze. Behind them, Jake could hear the charges counting down. 3 minutes, 2 minutes. They reached their ship with 30 seconds to spare. Jake's hands flew over the controls, bringing damaged engines online. The ship lifted off just as the explosions began. The Nexus tore itself apart from within, across the galaxy. Void ships suddenly went dark. Network that had controlled them was gone. Jake's ship limped away from the destruction, its hull breached in a dozen places. They would make it to the nearest human outpost barely. In the co-pilot seat, Zarin reached over and took his hand. "You did it," she said. "You saved us all." "We did it," Jake corrected. "Together," she smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, it reached her eyes. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild your empire, the galaxy. Everything. It's going to take time. And us, what happens to us?" Jake looked at her, this woman who had become an empress while he fought her war from the shadows. "I don't know. A lot has changed. Some things haven't," she said quietly. "I still love you, Jake Martinez, and I think you still love me. I never stopped. Then we'll figure it out together." 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new Thalorian human joint station orbiting Earth. Through the window, he could see ships from dozens of species working together to rebuild damaged worlds. Zarin joined him, wearing a simple dress instead of her imperial robes. On her finger was a ring made of Earth, silver, and Thalorian crystal. The Council approved the new trade agreements, she said, and the cultural exchange programs. Good. Maybe the next generation won't have to fight the wars we did. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her. "Do you ever regret it? The choices we made?" Jake thought about the question. About 3 years of separation and pain. About all the battles fought and friends lost. About love that had survived the death of empires. "No," he said finally. "We became who we needed to be. You became an empress. I became a defender. And now we get to become something new." "What's that?" "Partners in Eve."